Rex Hoggard joins us now on the show on Golf Today. And, I mean, the Americans were behind the 8 ball early in this Ryder Cup, ultimately trying to play catch-up right when we had, you know, little micro moves where it felt like they could close the gap. Ultimately, just too large a margin. What would you say was the main catalyst for the Americans, once again, coming up short in Europe?
I think when they unpack this, weeks and months from now, they'll look back on that Friday. I don't think you can come back from that kind of, I called it Black Friday in the column that I wrote. You've never been, the United States has never been swept in the morning session to open the Ryder Cup before. So now all of a sudden you built yourself a hole, and it didn't get much better in the afternoon. To be 5 points down after that first session, you're right. They made a game of it. They came back, they fought hard, especially on Saturday afternoon and going into the middle part of Sunday. But when you put yourself in that much of a hole, I think every captain will look back and say that's what did it.
So what's next for the Americans? You know, we've seen the task force. We've seen the players have a more vocal voice. And, Zach saying, I want to find 6 players to make this team whole. They weren't whole enough, clearly. So what's next for Team USA?
Damon, you and I have spent a lot of time in these types of press conferences, and the second guessing and the hindsight started immediately on Sunday night when it comes to Zach Johnson and that team. You heard part of it right there about preparation. Was the U.S. team really ready? And I think that's certainly a big part of this. Having more than 4 weeks off between the end of the Tour Championship and the start of the Ryder Cup did not benefit the U.S. team. You only had a handful of players that had any competitive reps at all between then. And I just think it's too long. Jordan Spieth addressed it, that in a perfect world, you can find a way to make sure the Ryder Cup is always a week after the Tour Championship, or at most 2 weeks after the Tour Championship. And it seems to me when we start second guessing and looking at what can be fixed, I don't know there's anything a task force or the PGA of America or Team USA can do about Scotty Scheffler's putting or Jordan Spieth's ball striking, but they can look at a calendar and they can make it easier for Team USA. And I think there's some other things that they can probably look at, but it goes to the heart of this. It's really, really hard to win an away Ryder Cup, especially here in Europe. Then they probably need to find some parity there as well.
I mean, it's one of the hardest road environments, not just in golf, but in all of professional sports, especially when you look at how long the drought has been for the Americans. What's the main difference between either how the Europeans and Americans construct their 12-man teams or how they prepare for the Ryder Cup? Is there something that stands out to you?
I think when you look at the Europeans, and I've seen a lot this morning, I was kind of reading some of the takes that everyone has had. I don't think that Luke Donald was better prepared than Zach Johnson. Actually, if you kind of look at it from 30,000 feet, Zach Johnson had the full 2-year cycle, more or less, to prepare and get ready for this week. Whereas we all know Luke Donald was kind of put in the job about 13, 14 months ago because Henrik Stenson was removed from the post. I don't think that has anything to do with it. Again, it goes back to the U.S. team clearly wasn't sharp, and that has to do with competitive reps and it not being there. And I think there is something that both sides probably need to look at objectively about trying to come up with some sort of parity. If you look at what's happened, 8 out of the last 9 Ryder Cups have been won by the home team. And they probably need to look at some sort of way to make it a little bit closer. And I will argue it got tight for about 45 minutes at Marco Simone on Sunday, and it was a little bit closer than the final score suggested. But they need to go back to the drawing board, and they need to find a way, because I don't think there's anything wrong with Team USA, and there's certainly nothing wrong with Team Europe. But when you have these huge margins, you have this huge disparity for the home team versus the away team, I don't think that's good for parity.
Rex, the Americans want to win the Ryder Cup, but sometimes it feels like they want to win as competitors, whereas the Europeans want to win it almost by birth. They have these talismans. To hear, Justin Rose talk about the players who came before, and to hear John Rahm talk about Spain and what Seve, Ali, and Sergio have meant. Who are the American talismanic figures? Where's the Lanny? Where's the Larry Nelson, the Tom Watson? Is there enough of an American talismanic inspiration to match what the Europeans seem to carry in their soul?
I mean, to your point, I have never seen so many posters of Seve anywhere than last week. And this is what the European side has done really the last few Ryder Cups. They have made this passionate. I thought there was a great picture on social media last night. They actually had a locker for Seve. It was right next to Victor Hovland's locker with a complete uniform and the Ryder Cup sitting in front of it. You're right. They were able to ride these emotional waves from the past, whereas the Americans don't seem to have that. I don't know how you rekindle that. I'll go back to, you mentioned the task force at the beginning of that. I think whatever happened coming out of Glen Eagles and the creation of the task force and where the United States team is right now was a move in the right direction. But it's only a move in the right direction in as much as they're a generation, maybe two generations behind the Europeans on this front. I'm not saying it didn't mean anything to the Americans a generation ago, but they certainly, well, the United States certainly does not have those iconic figures you don't see, to your point, Laney, on the wall of a U.S. team room or Tom Watson. And I think that might be part of the issue as well.
Rex, when we analyze captains in a Ryder Cup, generally, it falls into those two buckets. Whoever the winning captain is made all the right moves, and we then look at his captain's picks and say, oh, the team construct was amazing. The losing captain, it's always, okay, well, his missteps were here. He did a poor job in X or Y. Like, if you're Zach Johnson, can you have a week where you were a good captain and the players just didn't play well enough, or are you automatically a poor captain based on the results?
Well, it depends on who you're asking, George. I mean, if you're asking the journalists, of course I'm going to play the result. That's what we do. We sit here, we have to provide content, and this is going to provide months of content. So that's the beauty of the Ryder Cup. I remember having the same feelings when I left the K Club Ryder Cup. I was kind of semi-embedded with the U.S. team, and I thought Tom Lehman had done everything humanly possible to get that team ready, to make that team prepared to do what, again, a team had not done in a really long time, to win on European soil. And it wasn't even close. He got absolutely boat raced. And in retrospect, I have come to the conclusion that a really, really good captain can make a difference if this is a close match. If we're talking about a half point or a point, then a good captain can make a difference with all the moves they make. I don't know what a captain can do when, I go back to Friday, when you have a situation where a team falls so far behind. There's only so much ground you can make up. And in the case of Zach Johnson, I don't know. Everyone said he didn't respond when he got punched in the face. They always get punched in the face. How are they going to respond? I'm not sure there was an easy answer to what happened on Friday.
Well, the U.S. have to sit on this for a while until 2025. All roads lead to Bethpage Black. Rex, we appreciate the time. Safe travels. We'll speak to you soon.